All right, you know what it is. This is the Big Douglas Show. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So hop in the comments and tell us what you think. Big Pooh is with us on a Monday, and our guest to help sort out the game from last night from Hoops District is Neil Dalal. Neil, how are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. Pooh, before we get to the game, you did not choose violence yesterday by suggesting you could go without ever eating another slice of pizza, did you?
Yes, I did. I waited till like 2:30 in the morning.
To have
Nah,
said slice?
yeah, man. I'm not a big pizza guy. I mean, I don't have any funk with it, but I cannot eat pizza and be okay. It's not at my top 10 list of foods. I'm not a ninja turtle. I don't need pizza to survive.
Now, while we disagree on that, we do agree on Alfredo.
Oh my God, the most basic of pasta dishes. My beginner pasta dish, Alfredo. Specifically, I should have said specifically Alfredo in the jar
Out the
that come
jar,
in the
the old ragu out the jar.
Yeah, that's what I should have said. I should have specified that. But I said what I said.
Neil, do you have any scorching hot food takes that the world would be surprised by?
Uh, I mean, I do like pineapple on pizza, so
Ah,
Oh,
oh
Lord.
man.
ah,
Oh,
ah. I don't even
certainly.
like pizza, but definitely not that.
Oh man. Get a little sweet and salty going.
I know a lot of people that like the pineapple. I cannot. I am not a pineapple and ham man. I'm not a pineapple and ham guy at all. My mom used to always make that every year for Easter. I'm just not into it. Um,
Maybe I don't eat pork anymore, so that
well,
definitely killed the pineapple pizza thing.
yes, it did. All right. Well, the unicorn finally played last night, and Pooh, let's do it like this way. Tommy deserves credit for getting himself out of trouble. It feels like, but we must also remember Tommy got himself into most of that trouble. Uh, Porzingis' problem has never been his ability; it's been about health. Well, we got a glimpse last night of what it could look like, though.
Absolutely. You know, Going back to the Tommy getting himself out of trouble, this feels very Ernie Grunfeldish. That was his
Don't say that.
specialty. But I think the thing about Porzingis is obviously, definitely health is his main objective here. It's not his ability, but it gives the Wizards a different dynamic. Especially since Bill's been there, it's normally the guards. They tried to, they had Wall and Bill, then they had Bill and Russ, and then they tried to do Spencer and Bill. And I think them going this route, if last night was any indicator, going this route gives them a different dynamic that they haven't had or tried with with Bill at least, and having a front court partner that's just as talented to go with him in the backcourt, and then everybody else fill in. So like I said, yesterday was just a small sample size. It was, an inferior opponent, if you will, but
Sure.
just seeing where you could put him in the high post. Obviously, he can shoot threes from long distance. He can play at the rim. He can, block shots. He's a difference maker on defense. So, like I said, this teases a whole different dynamic than one that we're accustomed to watching, since 2001, which was a backcourt dominant team. And now to have that balance with Porzingis in the front court when Bill comes back, because he will be back, ladies and gentlemen, in the backcourt, and then a Kyle Kuzma, who can play. All they need is a guard that keeps them on track in the offense, and you know, who knows where they go from there.
The other thing, Neil, I think that's interesting is it will be. Yeah, this has been a small team in past years, with Wall, and I think people forget what is Beal 6'3", 6'4".
Yep.
He's not a tall shooting guard.
6'3" on a
Uh,
good day.
right. Porzingis at the 5 lets him put Gafford at the 4 and Kuzma at the 3. I mean, it's a tall lineup that this team hasn't had. I mean, in a long time.
Yeah.
Do you like that lineup and what it presents?
Certainly I think, and everybody's talked about this, does Kristaps Porzingis play the 4? Does he play the 5? Does he play the, alongside Kuzma at the 4? Or, does Gafford play at the 5? They have a lot of, diverse options available to them. I think everybody has looked at Cleveland as, okay, their front court is Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Those are 3 7-footers. You could do something similar with Kuzma, Porzingis, and Gafford. Couple of those guys are only 6'10-ish, but Porzingis 7'3". You can do a lot of different things. And somebody asked Wes Unseld Jr., "Oh, can you start dictating how other teams play their lineups because they just have to match up against you instead of just kind of letting them run whatever rotation they want to run?" I think it'll be very interesting. We didn't see any Porzingis with Gafford yesterday. Some of that might have just been Porzingis is still on a minutes restriction around the 22 low 20s minutes wise, and certainly I think we'll see more and more diverse and interesting lineups the rest of these 19 games that will be very telling to what they can potentially roll into next season.
I like the fact that you don't necessarily have to play Gafford and Porzingis together because they have Kuzma 6'10", Denny 6'9", Ruiz, a strong 6'8". So you don't necessarily have to run Gafford and Porzingis together to still have that height on the floor. But you still have a lot of skill on the floor on the offensive side and can do a lot of spacing, which I think the benefit of starting Porzingis at the 5 gives you that. You have spacing all around the court at all times. Plus, Porzingis can actually play in the post. He's the only big man they have that can play in the post. So, for spacing, I think Porzingis at the 5 with them other guys. The smallest people on the team now are what? Bill, Ish.
Yeah, because Neto's tall though, right? Is Neto not tall?
Nah, not really.
I think some people might be hurt that he's listed, at 6 foot. I don't even know if he's part of the 6 foot club really officially, but we'll see. He might not necessarily be in the long-term plans.
I think what they have with Sato, even though
that's who I was thinking. Sato is tall, right?
Yeah. Now Sato's tall. Sato's 6'7".
That's who I was thinking. 6'7". Yeah.
He's 6'7".
I know what I said there. That wasn't right.
Yeah. I like what they have with Sato out there. He's exactly the type of point guard they need. Going to get you in the offense. Going to push the ball. He can defend a little. He's 6'7", so you hunt him out on switches. He's still tall. You can't pin him to the basket on switches. So we'll see.
Pooh, did you catch Spencer Dinwiddie saying that the reason he didn't score as much because he was taking one for the team?
I saw that. I saw that. With look, man. I still think it was part of Spencer being hurt when he first got here, but wanting to prove his contract, so he was willing to go out there and play even though he wasn't 100%. And you could tell on some nights. I don't just look at the offensive side of the floor. I look at the defensive side of the floor, and people were hunting him out to blow by him on defense, which was indicative of either he wasn't trying or that knee was still, wasn't 100% or close to 100%. So, I think it's just one of them things where, Spencer going to have to, both Spencer and the Wizards going to have to eat it, man. Like you got the guy, he didn't work out for, whatever reasons. He wasn't the fit you thought he was going to be. And, he's not here anymore. You got Porzingis in here, man. Just worry about your guy, and it is what it is. He's gone. He's back in the role that he thrived in from day one, and that's the 6-man off the bench role, not starting. He'll spot start like he did the other night, but he's the guy you want off the bench running rap shot on second units, and that's just not what we had him doing here. So it didn't work out.
Pooh, you mentioned it earlier with Brad. One thing that I think is interesting and is blatantly obvious at this point, one of the reasons why he don't want to go anywhere, I assume, outside of the money, is his voice in the organization is loud. You can hear it. You can see he's already telling people I'm evaluating point guards for next season. Neil, I think that's very interesting. It's not a quiet voice in the organization.
Yeah, I think most definitely, even going back to, when Tommy Shepard very initially, took the job and, they signed him to that 1+1 extension that, kind of gets us to where we are now. They have given him every opportunity to voice his opinion, to be involved in the conversation, to have okays on certain things. Very clearly, Bradley Beal is the one that said, hey, sure, I'd like to play, alongside Spencer Dinwiddie. That didn't necessarily work out, but he had big input on that signing overall. And so more likely than not, that'll continue to happen. Ted Leonsis is pretty much enamored, with Beal, both on and off the court. So they've given him a very, large role, like you said, to have his voice heard. And, again, aside from the money, that's something that he's not going to get, necessarily other places, if he's coming in as a number 2 guy, around a more, built up organization that is, maybe just a piece away or something like that. So excellent point that it's the money and, his power that he wields.
And he said as much, was it last year or last off season or a year or two ago when he was talking about potentially going to another organization, and he talked about how the grass isn't always greener. Exactly. And how if he, like you just said, Neil, if he goes to another organization, he's not the guy at that point. And, he's liking being the guy, like he's liking having that input. He's liking that, they do come to him and ask him, what does he think of certain things? And, the money is awesome. That extra, 60 million is pretty awesome. But right. Also being able to have that kind of input and that kind of carte blanche within the organization is, it's hard to let that go once you've had it, So that's why I say at this point,
how much bigger did the upside for this team get if Porzingis stays healthy? Like, how excited should Brad be about the direction of the franchise? Right.
Very. I think like real talk, Porzingis, Brad, Kuzma, if they actually get a point guard, right? It doesn't even have to be an all-star point guard. It just has to be the right point guard for this team.
Even say pencil in a worst case of Satoransky.
Right. Like, I think the ceiling is raised just because, like I said, this will be the first time in the Wall Bill era that we've seen them go, instead of backcourt dominant, have a big man that you have to fear, which we saw last night, dumping into him in the high post, low post. It was causing double teams, kickouts, open threes. When the last time, other than on the break, this team had so many open threes. So I think that dynamic, having that backcourt and getting Bill back off the ball so much, I think will be important, especially to his 3-point percentage. Having a point guard that can deliver it to him instead of him having to handle the ball as much as he was handling it, the last few years.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people thought that Beal was better suited as the second best player on a team. Is that what he is here now?
They're like 2A, 2B.
Yeah.
2A, 2B.
That's a better way to put it. I was going to say 1A, 1B, but 2A, 2B is probably the more accurate description.
They had Rui Hachimura was talking about how he's a high post shooter, not a 3-point shooter, a mid-range guy. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that everything doesn't have to be a 3. But he's shooting the ball really well, and I hope that they will convince him to keep shooting it more, right? Neil, I don't know about you, but I've been pleasantly surprised of what we've seen from Rui since he's come back.
Yeah, absolutely. From the moment that he entered the league, a couple seasons ago, this was a point of emphasis for him, even going back to when he was working with Corey Frazier, on Scott Brooks' staff. They were always in the gym, always working on his shot. David Atkins was also very involved. They were trying to, add more arc to his shot. Initially, it was kind of a little bit too line drivey. So this is just kind of, the reward for the labor that he's put in. Obviously he's, has somewhat of a small sample size. I think it's roughly, 54-ish, 24 plus ish games into the season for him. that he's now been around. So, it's definitely good to see. He's very choosy about the 3-point shots that he does take. The large majority of them are just, catch and shoot. He's in the corner, let it fly. Everybody, from Wes Unseld Jr., Kyle Kuzma, they would love to see him, shoot more. Hopefully he can grow and be comfortable with that. I think something for young players to learn, and this is something that Contavious Caldwell-Pope mentioned, was that, sometimes, even if you're not 100% open, it's still a good shot. In the NBA, you're not going to get a lot of wide open looks. So you can't be afraid to let it fly, even if you're, a little bit slightly contested, because that's still a good shot, in the flow of an NBA offense these days.
Absolutely. I think Rui, him coming back as late in the season as he did, he's still trying to find his place within this team and this offense. I think once, next season rolls around, he'll have a little firmer grasp. Plus, he doesn't have all of the different players in front of him, with the guys gone. And I think they're kind of shaping out what they want at this point. And he's firmly still in them plans. So I think coming back next season is going to be this offseason actually is going to be very important for Rui, because he gets to just work on his game. He doesn't have to worry about the Olympics. He doesn't have to worry about, the mental thing is probably ongoing, but it's not where it was, last offseason. So, because you could tell why the 3-point game has improved, his mid game has suffered. He's not the same in the mid post as he was, prior to this year. So, that's a young player trying to put it all together, but definitely think he should be out there roasting second teams when he come in. Like he should be out there roasting them.
Neil, we're about halfway through the season in year one of Wes Unseld Jr. You think? How do you like what he's brought to the table, and what you kind of we're hoping to see from the first year coach?
Yeah, and for the fan base's perspective, he's already kind of on the quick hot seat for a lot of them. I think obviously he has a long-term deal. He's not going anywhere this season. He's been dealt a pretty tough hand. Trying to come in as a first-year head coach and take control over locker room with a lot of veterans in there is not an easy task. That was something that Scott Brooks, for his other faults, he didn't have too much issue in. He was a respected coach. Obviously, having Russell Westbrook backing you up in the locker room goes a long way. But things have gotten very, very ugly for the Wizards this season with the guys that they ended up sending out. People complaining about their roles. That could have turned pretty ugly. Who knows how much even happened behind the scenes that did not get out to the public about what they might have had to gone through. From a X's and O's standpoint, people only continue to rave about Unseld. His preparedness, his attention to detail. That's all things that were flaunted by the organization when he was first hired. So from that standpoint, you can only be happy about that. I think the one disappointing part is that as good as defense as they played to start the year, when they got off to that 10-3 start, it's kind of been far from that, and definitely not in any kind of consistent manner, thus far the rest of this season, which, led to a lot of the unraveling of the season to the trade deadline. So whether that it's him, needing to simplify things, or, he felt that he didn't have the personnel together, if he was brought in to be and bring this team back to, defenses that they haven't seen in, 5+ years since the Randy Whitman era, that's one area where definitely needs to improve on, because that's what's held this team back for the past few seasons.
I think one misstep Wes Unseld Jr. might have did was not having a more or a former head coach on his staff. Just for like you were saying earlier, Neil, just the locker room element of it. Like, you could be X and O'd out, but if you don't know how to really control that locker room with the mix of veterans and young guys they had, even though they didn't have anybody over the age of 30, all them guys were still veterans. They had, a lot of them guys, they had years in the league. So I think maybe having at least one more experienced coach on his staff that can give him just some guidance and things he may run into that obviously he's never dealt with, being this is his first head coaching gig. But other than that, like Neil said, I mean, it was slipping. The locker room was slipping, but once the trade deadline came, it was like a new energy around the team. And, you actually, now you really can see the offense at work with a guy like Porzingis, in the lineup. You really can see what the offense can be. And you saw it even after the trade deadline with the way the ball started moving around, the court. So, like Neil said, I think this offseason they back to the drawing board on the defense. Defense is a want-to thing. It's more about effort than anything. And you just have to have guys that actually want to play and guys that want to play together, play on that string. And they have to get back to that. And you saw it earlier, like when guys started complaining about their roles, which was on offense and, shots and all those different things, them defensive numbers tailed off so fast.
Yeah.
Like they went in the toilet because guys were too concerned with what was going on one side of the court and wasn't really caring or putting effort into the other side of the court. So they're definitely going to have to get back to those fundamentals this offseason. And, when you bring in guys, you got to bring in guys that play both sides of, like, those the type of guys they need now. If you do not play both sides of the court, they shouldn't even want to sign you. Like, we have guys that can put the ball up. We have guys that can score. We need guys that's going to want to get after it on the defensive side of the ball now, especially their next point guard. He sets the tone. Yeah. You need a guy that's going to set the table and set the tone on defense. And you have guys that can fill it up. So I think that's going to be very important for them going forward, is to get the type of guys that West needs in order to get that defense turned around to where we all believe it could be.
Now let's wrap with this. Pooh, I know what your opinion was a month ago as far as making the play-in tournament and winning games. I don't know if you've looked at the schedule going forward, and I know it's hard to tell these things. It is not the world's toughest schedule. With young guys and an excellent player like Porzingis, are you more excited to see those guys get experience now in a play-in style tournament, or would you still prefer that, accidentally on purpose they lost a lot of games down the stretch and had a choice at one of these top draft picks?
I'm good either way, to be honest with you. Just because of where their positioning was record-wise.
I asked because prior to Porzingis, I know your thoughts on this, and it was like, please lose every game possible.
Yeah. Now, I mean, they were losing games, but it at this point, I'm just more worried about them playing with effort and playing the right way and getting that experience. And what's going to happen is going to happen. I mean, because even at the trade deadline, like, they had a better chance at making the play-in tournament than they did at getting lucky and getting into the top 5, draft picks where they really need to be in order for the draft to make a big difference. So at this point, it's just like, look, Wes Unseld need the experience, coach it out for real. Them young guys need experience, play it out for real. Porzingis need to get acclimated with his team and with his, with the playbook and with the roster. In his limited time, play him out. Don't play him on no back-to-backs. Let him play his 20, 25 minutes a game, get that playing time in, and just really go through the paces with these guys. So whether it's play-in or it's lottery, next year, they'll still have that experience that they wouldn't have had if you would have been straight just going about trying to, we got to get into this lottery and I'm only playing my veterans. Like, no, just play them young guys, let them get that experience, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen at the end of the day. You just got to play it out the right way.
Neil, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think, I agree with Pooh for the most part that, you can't get into some, bad habits of, we're gonna, on, like you said, on accident, on purpose, lose some games, tank to try and get, a top 4 pick. You got to build those right habits, those winning habits, those, habits of consistency that, you got to come in and do your job every single day. And, for a lot of these young guys who are coming in and, playing postseason, playing time for the first time, if they get into the play-in tournament, let alone, get a playoff series, that'll be the first postseason experience for, Corey Kispert, Denny Avdia, who was hurt, at the end of last season. Rui Hachimura got a taste of it, in that Philadelphia series last season. And, I'm sure it, helped him. There's nothing that can prepare you for playoff basketball but playing and being in that situation. It's very different beast in the regular season. So very much so, even though, say they sneak in and are the 8th seed, in the playoffs going up against, Miami or Chicago or whoever, that series is, probably not going to go in Washington's favor at all, but you're going to get stuck with another 15th overall draft pick. Unfortunately, that's how, the things in the lottery work out. But like you said, and I think Pooh brought up a good point as well, it's important for Wes Unseld Jr. to get, some of that postseason coaching experience as well, because, we don't necessarily know how much of a different animal that is from being a lead assistant to now being the head guy in those high leverage situations. So, see where the chips fall. I think the most important thing to me is Rui Hachimura has got to be playing more. All of these young guys, Rui, Corey, Denny, should all be playing 30, if not more minutes to me to really just try and accelerate, that development process. If that comes at the expense of guys like Raul Neto and, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you got to hope that their egos are not too bruised and, they're willing to accept that.
It was KCP been balling. You gotta let him go till he stop balling now.
This is true. That's 6 for 6 from 3 game. I was like, oh man, this guy cannot miss.
Yeah, he looking like KCP fresh out of Georgia now. You got to let him go a little bit.
That's right. Number 1 in the country at the time in Georgia. I never understood how that team was never better. There was a lot of excitement last night, and it feels like we haven't had any of that in a while with this team, minus the first stretch, which had us all thinking that they were going to win 50 games, right? Remember that?
Right.
It was like a millennia. It feels like a millennia ago when we thought they were on their way to 50 games. Our guest today was Neil Dalal. You can find him on Hoop_Spaces on Twitter. Anything else you got? You want to tell the folks at home, Neil?
No.
You got anything coming up?
Me. Yeah, you can follow Hoop District for some good content Wizards-wise, and you can follow me at Neil Dalal 96.
All right, Pooh, we'll see you Monday.
Yes, indeed. Appreciate you, fellas.
All right.